Okay, so what I'm seeing, oh, okay, fine, yeah, okay, I've seen the poll.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Good evening, Dr. Kalu.
Um,
Dr. Kalu, you can hear me?
Yes.
Yes. So,
can hear you well, Daktari. Karibu. My name, as you've heard, is Dr. Kalu Agnes Iits, and I welcome you to today's CME. We are going to be doing things a bit differently today. As you can see on your screens, there is a poll going on. Just take a few, it doesn't even take a minute to read and submit your answer. Even as we wait for us to start the discussion today, we are going to just have a discussion led by, moderated by Dr. Cindy Ogundo, and in the panel we'll have Dr. Sitati and Dr. Michael Gishangi. But for now, as you log in, let's just have us joining and filling in the poll. We'll still have another poll at the end of the discussion today. So don't be in a hurry to log off, so that you can also get to know what the results are, and we all joining in the discussion for the do's and don'ts in conducting good research. So we are going to give you another 3 minutes for those who are joining and have not yet submitted their response to the poll. Please do so before we can start the discussion today. Thank you. Good evening once again. I believe we have all participated in the poll, and those who are joining us, please do so. It's a very short one, as even we start with the presentation. Dr. Cindy, I think we can start. Is it okay?
Yes, it's okay.
So today we are going to be discussing about conducting good research, the do's and don'ts. To moderate for us this evening is going to be Dr. Cindy Ogundo, an ophthalmologist practicing at Mbagathi Hospital, and also a person with, she's one person who has research and all matters ophthalmologic research at heart and interests. And so she's going to be introducing to us today the panelists who are going to join us in the discussion and moderating for us. And then at the end of the discussion, we shall have your questions answered, or if you have them during the discussion and the panelists are able to, they're going to answer them for us. Then we will have a poll at the end. So please post your questions on the chat, even as the discussion is going on. We are going to do it a bit differently today, so there is no presentation to start with. Dr. Cindy, you can take over and introduce your team.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kalu. Good evening, everybody. First, I'd like to apologize. I'm not able to be on video right now. Hopefully in the course of our discussion, I'll be able to get the video up and running, but you will have the other panelists on video, so at least you will have their faces to look at while we are having our discussion. We have a humble request. Because of the Zoom package that we have, we're not able to pin the panelists on the screen. So we're going to request that everybody else would have their video off, so that it's only the video of the panelists that are on your screen, so that everyone can have a chance to see the panelists as they engage in today's discussion. So kindly have your videos off, and that will allow the today's panelists to be the only ones to have their videos on, and you can engage with them. I will have my video on as soon as I am able to. Thank you. So you've been told my name is Dr. Ogundo, and today I'll be taking us through a topic that most people think belongs only to academicians, or at best, maybe employees of KEMRI. That topic is research. Dr. Kalu has already mentioned that we'll be taking questions. So if you have any burning questions, please type them in the chat box, and Dr. Kalu will be curating the questions for us, and we will have a Q&A session towards the end of this evening's discussion. I hope everybody who is online has been able to submit their responses to the poll that was running when you joined in. Evans, has everybody been able to submit their responses? You should have, I believe, 45 responses in total.
We are at 27 of the 44.
Okay, can I kindly request those that who have not yet participated in the poll, please take a few seconds to submit your answer, please. And while you're doing that, maybe I'll just kick us off with a short introduction on research. I know a lot of us feel like you already know what research is, because it's sort of a part of our everyday life, especially in the last year or so with COVID. And because of that, everyone has sort of a intuitive definition that they have in their head. So today I want to give us a more objective definition of what research is. And research, basically, at its most basic form, can be defined as systematic and creative actions which we take in order to increase knowledge. And usually any form of research is going to begin with a question about something that has been observed or has been experienced. Now, having said that, I think it might occur to all of you that each and every one of us has done research already. And by that, I do not mean your MEd or dissertation or your diploma, higher diploma dissertation, but really in your everyday life, you're actually doing research pretty much almost every day. Those of you who like being in the kitchen, a new recipe that you try out, that's research. Those of you who are like my little brother, all the toys you took apart and the electronics you took apart to figure out how they work, that's research as well. So, and then those who are a bit more like me, all the rules that you are breaking in order to see what the consequences would be, that is also research. But the kind of research that we're interested in today is scientific research. And that is a bit different from the research that you probably all engage in almost every day of your lives. And what sets scientific research apart is that it has to be performed using scientific methods. So we said research is basically an activity you undertake to increase your knowledge. Now, if you undertake that activity using scientific methods, which are, you basically use your methods to obtain data, to analyze the data and interpret that data, that is what converts it into scientific research. So it's the methodology that changes it from just being research to becoming scientific research, which is what we're discussing today. Evans, do we now have our poll results in?
Yes, I can. We have 32 of the 48. Is it okay if I stop it?
Yes, I think we'll work with those ones. Could we please project the results on the screen, please? Okay. So I think everybody is looking at what I am also looking at. And oh, this is nice. About half of us think that, you know, we could probably engage in research. It's something doable. So you've all picked uncomplicated cataract surgery. And about 43% of us think research is for super special demigods and is on the same page as exenteration facial reconstruction. And there's 6% of us who, I think this is a refresher course for them because they think research is just about as simple as epilation. So that's very encouraging. I was thinking we would have a higher number in those who fear research. So I'm really encouraged that a lot of people are taking an interest in research and are not scared off by the word and the things that go along with the research. So back to scientific research. So what are the requisites for your research to be considered scientific, other than just the methodology that you're going to use? So this research that you were going to carry out has to be neutral. So by neutral, we mean that even though it's something you're interested in, it's not emotional. You don't go in with a closed mind saying, I want the results to be X, Y, Z. So I'm going to work at getting X, Y, Z results. Then your research needs to be systematic, meaning there has to be a plan and a protocol that you're following. And what's the purpose of having it being systematic? Because for good scientific research, it has to be reproducible. So anybody, anywhere else in the world with similar resources as you have should be able to do the same thing that you have done. So that just reminds me of something Dr. Rono mentioned last week during the talk on ethics. He was encouraging people that if you have an idea, talk to a couple of your colleagues and run with the idea. Because once you publish your research and it's peer reviewed, it ceases to be original and your thing. Because by virtue of scientific research, it has to be reproducible, meaning anybody else can now do the thing that you wanted to do or the thing that you were first at doing, and it is no longer just yours. So they can add to the germ or the seed that you have planted and create something new. And a lot of time, especially in Africa, what we do is we create a seed and then we let somebody else grow it. And what we are hoping this series of talks is going to help us do is help us start having the confidence to not just create the seed, but to also nurture it and create those new innovative ideas, so that the next things that are named, they should be named for us. The next protocols that are created, it should be us who have created those kind of things. To quote Hall and Wallen, the research process is a bit like an eye exam. The doctor makes a best guess for the most appropriate lens strength and then adjusts the lenses from there. Sometimes the first option is the best fit, and sometimes it takes a few tries with different options before finding the best one for you and your solution, and your situation, sorry. I'm guessing from the wording, you can tell that Hall and Wallen are neither optometrists nor ophthalmologists, but I'm hoping you have gotten the point across that research is not going to be a straight line. And that sometimes frustrates us when we are starting off. It's going to be a reiterative process. There are things you might have to look at again. There are ideas you might have to restructure, and there are opinions that you might have to drop or pick up, depending on which direction your research is taking us. So to help us engage with today's topic in research, I have with me two panelists. There is Dr. Sarah Sitati, who is a pediatric ophthalmologist working at Kenyatta and running her own private clinic, and is also the ROP working group chair. Karibu Daktari.
Thank you.
And my other panelist for today is Dr. Michael Gishangi, who I believe is well known to all of us. He's the head of the Ophthalmic Services Unit and quite a seasoned researcher. Karibu Daktari.
Asante, thank you.
Okay. Fine. 1 second. Okay, so thank you. So let's go ladies first. Dr. Sitati, how did you get involved in research?
Thank you, Dr. Cindy, for inviting me to this panel. I felt a little bit unqualified to be here, but I think a lot more people attending this meeting are in my kind of scenario where you don't really have any training in research or public health as such, but maybe you'd like to do something in research. And for me, I can say that I entered the world of research. Basically, I am interested in stories, especially patient stories, and answering questions. And from the stories I would hear, I would have questions that I would want to answer. For example, when I was working at Sabatia Eye Hospital, I found that we had so many children who would present to the eye clinic with trauma. And so we were doing a lot of ocular trauma surgeries. Like we would have in a week at least 4 or 5 children with penetrating or non-penetrating trauma who would need admission and surgery. And when I listened to the stories about these children, some familiar things kept coming up over and over again. Like the injuries were by sticks. And I also noticed another thing, that most of the injuries were caused by other children. And so I went to check in the literature. Is this true? Has this been documented that actually most of the pediatric trauma is from children injuring other children? And maybe because it's a sensitive topic, it had not it had not really been addressed before. And so you find that sometimes just in your daily clinical practice, you come across questions, you ask yourself questions, and when you go to look at the literature behind it, you find that maybe the answer is there partially or has not been fully answered. And so that gives you motivation to try and find the rest of the answers, or to find out how that thing applies to your current scenario.
Thank you, Dr.
Dr. Cindy, you are muted, please. Dr. Cindy.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Daktari. So I'm hearing that it's basically personal interest, things you're curious about that got you started in research. Dr. Gishangi, what about yourself?
Thank you and good evening, everyone. One, it is personal interest in trying to get tangible solution. But I will go back to years of 2004 when we started investigating the burden of trachoma in Kenya. It came to me as a burden thrown to me, work out to see how we can determine the burden of trachoma in Kenya. But, and we were able to work with others like Professor Kalimorio and others, some statisticians from AMREF and members of eye care workers who are in the field. And it was possible to establish the exact burden. But even much more interesting after that was the fact that we were able to do something towards that. Now that we were able to establish the burden, it was possible to plan what to do with it. In short, what I'm saying is that the most interesting part of the whole research cycle is probably knowing or identifying a problem and then investigating it and then doing something to sort it out. So in those years back 2004, I think once we were able to go through that cycle, to me, research became like, it is something good to do. It's good to identify a problem. There are systems or there are some steps one has to go through before you come up with some evidence that will help you. For example, in that situation, we were able to identify the exact number of people who need trachoma interventions. And so we knew where we were and we knew what we wanted to do, moving forward. So that was a very big motivator, in also coming up or identifying or perceiving problems and knowing that you can investigate them and come up with, something to do to make the situation better. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you very much, Dr. So I hope the audience has noticed it's just what you're interested in. And sometimes what you're given is what helps you decide how to choose a research topic. So nothing is out of bounds, technically, if you want to do research. Could be things that you see in your clinic every day, things that you come across in the theater, any of those things would constitute a good topic for research. And even things like case studies, you don't need to have 10 people or 10 things. It could be just one person that you're interested in, and that could form the basis for your research. Would you agree with that, Dr. Sitati? How do you usually choose a topic for yourself?
Okay, sometimes choosing a topic can be a bit tricky, but the best way to choose a topic, the best way to start is by doing something that is interesting to you. So how you can choose a topic? Sometimes you have observations in your day-to-day clinical practice and you want to answer a question. Like I said, you've observed something is happening and you're questioning, you want to find out more about this thing. So that is one way you can come up with a topic. Another thing is sometimes you have a new idea, yeah? You come up with a new way to do something, They say, okay, maybe CCC is always done this way, but I have found out that when I do it this way, I do it faster, and I don't know anyone else who does it this way. Then you have a new idea that you can actually research on. And then we also have what we call the Metoo phenomenon, where things have been done elsewhere. So diabetic retinopathy is this prevalence in Ethiopia. What is it in Kenya? So in as much as we discourage that Metoo studies, but they are important, because how does something that was done in another setting, how does it apply in your setting? Sometimes even questions come to you. Like Dr. Gishangi said, he was given the responsibility of determining the burden of trachoma in Kenya, and he had to come up with a way to do it. That has happened to me before. I remember when I was one time when I was a consultant, 2 residents who were rotating in my hospital, they came and they told me, Dr. Sitati, we have a problem. We have noticed that every patient who goes for glaucoma surgery, if they have advanced glaucoma, like pressure, the CDR of 0.8, 0.9, when we go for surgery, after surgery, their hand motion, yeah? And this has been a bit consistent. We noticed it with a group, a few weeks ago, and now with another group. Something is happening. So I asked them, what do you think is happening? And they said, I think it's this retrobulbar anesthesia that we are giving them. We are giving them wipeout phenomenon. And so I told them, well, bring me the proof that this is what actually is going on. And they actually went and came with about 6 to 8 files of patients. And true enough, there it was. These patients had presented with vision of about 0.8 or 0.9 advanced glaucoma with good central vision, better than 612. But after the surgery, they were all hand motion. And so from that was a turning point from that time. In patients with glaucoma, we would give a subtenon anesthesia instead of giving retrobulbar anesthesia. So that actually influenced and changed our practice from that on once we shared this information. So you can find that you may notice something, yeah, and not when we talk about doing research, sometimes it is small types of research like this that you translate into improving your practice, not necessarily that you've done a research that needs to be published, but these small stats are very important. What am I doing? Is it working? And is it working for the patient? And then now you can move on to bigger studies, which you can do in a proper methodological way and publish your results and share your results with others.
Thank you very much, Dr. I hope we have noticed that research comes in very many different forms, and picking a topic has really no formula. But what was interesting for me to note is that the residents came in with something that they had seen going wrong. And a lot of times we feel like research only has to be good news and good things. But sometimes even if something is going wrong, that is a topic of research, finding out why is this happening and how can it be improved or stopped or helped. Just the way Dr. Kishangi mentioned, that one of the benefits of doing research is that then you can come up with a solution to an issue or a problem. So Dr. Kishangi, once someone has a topic, what's usually the next step? What do you do after that? You've decided you want to investigate something, trachoma. What comes next?
Okay, before I talk about what next, maybe I should just add on to what Dr. Sitati has said. You'll easily get a topic, depending on what you are doing, or especially what you are doing on a day-to-day life. And if you have that culture of asking yourself, why is this, or is this the best? Most likely you are going to get a good question from there based on what you are seeing, and you'll be able to generate evidence to answer your question. For example, one time, and I know Dr. Manyara is on board, and we were trying to find out if people who have undergone cataract surgery were to be used to do counseling to other people who need cataract surgery, would that have some better impact than the way we normally identify patients with cataract surgery, who need cataract surgery, and then give them some counseling from health workers? Would peer counselors or people who have undergone through cataract surgery improve the uptake? And after that, it was possible to demonstrate that actually it is true that when somebody is describing from real life experience, to somebody else who needs that, it makes, or it has a big difference. Now, the unfortunate thing with that is that although we demonstrated good effect, we did not publish that work because that is good information. And the other thing is that we did not scale it up to see that it can make a difference in health. I still have that information and evidence, and we probably will work on it, in the spirit of increasing the knowledge base and also in the spirit of improving uptake of cataract surgical services. Now, you've asked me, once you identify a topic, what next? The next thing one would need to do is read about your topic, find out what others have done about it in different settings, ask the other experts. For example, for sure you may not be the only one in the field. You would ask others, what they think about it. Since you'll be able to collect, you'll be determined to gather data with respect to your problem, because research is about gathering data using sound methods and then analyzing and interpreting. It is good to reach out to other people who are experts in data or your data science, like the statistician, to understand if we were to develop, if this is our objective, what data do we actually need to collect? This and this is what we have. We have this in the health facilities. If we need to go to the community, this is what we need to get. So after all that is consolidated, then you go ahead and develop a protocol. A protocol is a standard procedure of how the process will go on. That protocol can be, administered by somebody else, somewhere else, if it is done in the right way. So once you do the protocol, then the next thing is, of course, you need it approved by the relevant ethical review bodies before you do the implementation. Now, the process, I would consider the process of research not complete until you go through the cycle of having given feedback and also having educated the other stakeholders. Because remember, we started by saying that there is a perceived problem, there's a problem that you have identified, and in our context, we are talking of improving health or improving eye health. So there is eventually need to give feedback or educate the different players, including the policymakers, so that they can make decisions and then implement your recommendations. And it will only be good when your recommendations are implemented and change the health situation or change, achieve the desired change. So that, in a nutshell, is what you would need to go through to get through research implemented. Back to you, Cindy.
Dr. Sitati, would you have anything to add on to that very comprehensive summary? An oxymoron, I know.
Yeah, for me, I'd just like to give a word of encouragement. It's not easy, but it can be done. I mean, it's easy when I give the example like what I gave of you have a small hospital setting, you have a question, you have answers can be retrieved quickly, data can be collected quickly, results can be seen almost immediately and even disseminated quite fast, because like in the scenario I gave of the glaucoma patients, we did the dissemination in a hospital CME. And from then on, practice just changed. And this was a good story. So sometimes it requires a bit more effort. Yeah. I've tried to do research as a consultant, and sometimes it's quite discouraging. You submit your proposal to the IRB board, you know, the letter that comes back corrects everything from your grammar to your concept to your question to your CV. And I remember once actually I left that proposal there and I didn't go back. But what I learned is actually not to give up. Yeah. Eventually 1 year later, I went back and I was like, okay, let me look at these comments and reframe this question in a way that just look at the points and reframe it in a way that it can be approved, or it's an easier concept or a more sensible question to ask. And so sometimes the task can seem daunting and we don't really have the time in between clinical practice. But once you have a passion for a subject, then you can push it. What I would say is start with the small things like auditing your work. Like, you know, I do 20 cataract surgeries in a month. What is the presenting vision? What is the final vision? And what is the refractive error? Small things can come to you, you know, that change your practice. And then from then on, you can look at bigger things that you can do or bigger questions that you can answer. Sometimes even you're already working, and documenting things, you just haven't collected your data. Like many of you do outreach, for example. You go to an outreach, you see like 200 people in a community, and and you come back home extremely tired and just go to sleep. Yeah. But if you look at this, you can actually come up with some sort of community health survey and say, in this district or in this zone that we went to, a sub-county, we did an outreach in the so-and-so sub-county, we saw 500 patients, the cataracts were 5, the allergies were 50, the refractive errors were 10. There already you're presenting data which is useful. And useful data catches people's attention. It gives information to people who can help you, who can support you, and who can help you improve your practice and improve your patient outcomes. So what I was going to say is it's not always easy, but start in a so small way, and the work that you're doing, assess it, collect data from what you already have, and look at it and say, okay, is this interesting? Can I share this? Yeah. And then go ahead and share it. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. So I hope you've noted, she said collect data. Sometimes when someone says collect data, we feel like this is something that is in an office somewhere, maybe in Osu. So I have to go there and pick it up and then read 20 journals, and then is when I'm doing research. No, the everyday work you're doing, that is what generates the data. And like Dr. Stati has mentioned, once you're sharing data, and even better, if you're sharing interpreted data, so you're sharing information, then you get people interested and you get people coming alongside you to help you out, and you start changing practice. You start making a difference in patients' lives. You start making a difference in clinical practice. You start making a difference in the community. So I'm hoping you're getting engaged and starting to think of the different things that you can also do where you are that we can now label as research. Dr. Kalu, have we got any questions that have come into us yet?
No, not yet. Not yet.
Okay. If anyone has any burning questions, please, you can unmute yourself and ask. I can give you a few minutes. So one of the things I get asked a lot is, does it qualify as research if you don't publish it? Yeah. So, sorry, is that someone who has a question?
No, there are no hands raised or anything, so you can continue, Dr.
I just wanted to, sorry, this is
Yes,
Rono.
Dr. Rono.
Yeah,
Yes.
this one from Kitale. I just wanted to comment that I think whatever you do that is actually, you actually found out from your either regular work or what a new procedure that works is actually termed as research. You don't have to actually publish it, but you can share with somebody else. And if that person actually adopts it as well, it actually becomes a new body of knowledge. If you ask yourself, how did the herbalists actually used to transfer their knowledge? Basically, that they actually used to do research on their own. They own it and they used to own it in their families. Eventually, they transferred to the other families. They used to publish their data. No, it was actually published orally in a society. So you actually don't need to publish the information, but you actually need to share it. You can actually come to a forum. I see like in last year's or the other year's COEXA meetings in, I think, Naivasha, or OSK meetings in Naivasha, where some practice that's actually being is evidence of what's being done elsewhere, and it seems to be working. When you go and try in a new area, it seems to work. That's what we call research as well. I also saw some clinical officers in our place. When I was working here, we used to remove caterpillar hairs using forceps, but it used to be a nightmare. But one time they just found out that you can actually use a needle, the blue gauge 23 needle. And that actually became the norm, and that was actually research. And he shared in their forums, and people adopted it. So that's actually a form of research, but it has never been published anyway, but it needs to be published. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dr. Rono is one of our chief investigators and researchers in the country. So it's very glad that he's able to contribute to today's discussion. Okay, I think if we do not have any burning questions, I'm hoping today. Yes.
Cindy, maybe I add something. Dr. Rono has not said that there's no need of publishing. He has only said that even if you don't publish, if you do some work, that is evidence that you have and you can share with those who are within your reach. Now, if you can publish, it means that more and more people will access your work or access that evidence, and they may as well use it to change practice. So it is good when you share in a wider scale.
Thank you, Dr. Shangi, for clarifying, actually for reading my mind very well. I mean, you don't have to publish, you actually need to share your research out, share it in the best way out, yes. Writing is a skill.
Thank you very much. So Dr. Sikati, Dr. Gishangi, are there any other pointers you'd like to give our audience as we conclude?
I think I need to add, first of all, as a part of COEXA, we have the JOEXA journal, which is continually receiving articles for publication. Yeah, so if you have a research that you have done and you're looking for somewhere to publish it, please, you can submit it to JOEXA. Right now, I think the submission is electronic on the JOEXA website. So don't hold your research to yourself, yeah? And if you feel you've submitted it before and there's been no response to it, just resubmit it, yeah? Maybe it slipped through the cracks, but it can be published. I really like when I attend conferences and I see research from people's experiences, in local experiences, because for me, it's quite relevant and it's something that at least I can apply to my setting. And, it is something that's more realistic than reading from a book or reading about Western research. And so it's important to get your data out there. Yeah, when we talk about publishing, sometimes also it can be a bit daunting. You open a submission page and you want to submit to BJO, and you open the page and there are all these requirements that you have to submit before you get even past the first past the first review, the first phase where you are selected to. There are several several phases that you go through before you finally get to be published in an international journal. And I can say I almost became a professor of rejection because I got a lot of rejections with my first few submissions. And in fact, at one point it got a bit discouraging. Yeah. But this actually taught me quite a bit about the process of submitting. Yeah, I learned some few things. You have to separate the manuscript from the title. You have to have an abstract. What is the word count? And over the time, I found it actually became more and more familiar as I did it over and over again. So the thing I think is just to try. Yeah, you try. And if you're feeling that the process is a bit daunting, start with our JOEXA journal. Actually, there are a lot of, what do we call them? Citations and reads on the regional papers published in JOEXA. It's just that no one is charged for reading them now. But when we look at the data, you find that a lot of people are referring to that data that our country and other regional countries are putting out there. So put your information out there. It will help somebody who's looking to answer a question. And don't be discouraged by the rejections that you get. You just resubmit to somewhere else, and eventually you'll get a publication. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dr. Gishangi, any parting comments?
Thank you very much, Dr. Ogundo. One, I want to say that I believe and I observe that we are making positive steps because I know Dr. Sitati is working on some research projects within Kenyatta National Hospital, which has been, I think, recognized by the research department, and that is good. I also have received queries or requests, for example, how can we investigate our glaucoma patients, what are the outcomes and so forth. And so probably that will be coming up soon. Now, for us or for me, who is probably, let me say, at policy level, it would be very good that if you are conducting some investigation, it would be good to liaise also with us so that we will facilitate the implementation. That is a translation of the evidence into either policy, or it can be used for purposes of planning other interventions and so forth. So I think it is good to engage especially relevant players, because the end game is improve clinical practice, improve public health access to health services and so forth. If you look at some studies done on retinoblastoma, we have been able to see a shift, of practice and even some good results in outcome of treatment. So these are the good fruits of continuous research and investigation that we need to embrace. That way we shall be able to achieve health much more easily. Sometimes it is felt that research is a bit expensive, but our socioeconomic status, or we as developing countries, we need to be very smart in how we use resources. And it is only by investigating something you understand what is the most cost-effective way of interventions and so forth. So this is the mindset that we should have. But in fact, the most important thing is just focusing at your day-to-day practice. How can you make it better, in the next cycle? How can you make, outcome better? How can you make access to the service better, and so forth? How can you reduce the complications? So these are the ideas that go hand in hand with what we are describing as research, that desire to improve service delivery or access to health and improve health outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sitati and Gishangi, for your participation and for all the information that you've given us. I hope it has given our audience a much broader view of what research is and encourage them that everyone is able to participate in research. I hope you've also noticed that we have the poll up and running again. And if you could take a few seconds to submit your answer, and let's see if after our discussion there has been any change in those statistics. Evans, do we have a good number of people having answered already?
We are at 15 of the 53.
Okay, we can give them a few more seconds to answer. So while you're answering, I would like to introduce Dr. Kevin Onyango from Novartis, who has a short presentation for us. Today's CME has been made possible by Novartis. So Dr. Kevin Onyango is a medical doctor who's had more than 13 years experience and has worked at KEMRI and is currently heading the research and innovation section for Novartis. Apparently, I did not know this, but Novartis is actually very interested in helping us do research. So they're a very appropriate partner for today's CME. So just before Dr. Onyango comes on, Evans, do we have a few more answers?
Yes, we are doing 19 of the 53. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think then we will let Dr. Onyango do his presentation, and we can take a look at the statistics after Dr. Onyango is done. Karibu, Daktari.
Thank you very much, Cindy. Can you hear me? Let me just put up my presentation.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hear you.
Okay, can you see the presentation, please?
Yes. You can see
Okay,
the presentation. Okay. You have
so put my camera.
you have stopped the sharing.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, now we can
see,
see your presentation.
but it's not on full, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, now you can see it? Okay.
You could move it. Yes, now it's on.
It's on, okay. Thank you very much. I think this has been a really interesting session for us. As mentioned, my name is Dr. Kevin Onyango. I might be familiar to some of you. And I work within Novartis as a clinical research medical advisor. And my role here is basically to work with partners across in different therapeutic areas to be able to identify new and potential investigators and sites to be able to conduct clinical trials in the region. As has been mentioned, clinical trials are not very commonly done in Africa, but that is what we are out to basically change. So I will begin with a very busy slide, and what I want to present is basically three things. I will give you an idea of what we do within clinical trials, and this here we are looking essentially at the interventional trials, and then what Novartis is doing, and then how you can also work with us to be able to achieve some of these aspects. As you've obviously known, and I was very concerned when I heard that Dr. Sitati was also becoming a professor of rejection, and within clinical trials, you have to develop a thick skin, yeah? Because most of the things, you try out, but you have to try many times before you actually achieve what you want to achieve. So here, you don't need to read all of the things, but the topic essentially is clinical trials, how to link the clinical and the operational expertise, because where you are, you're clinical experts in your therapeutic area, but how do we now link that with the operational aspects of clinical trials. You've seen that there are many things that happen within clinical trials. You have the regulatory, you have the ethics submissions, you have the pharmacy support in case if it is a drug trial. You also have quality management to look at audits, laboratory. All these things can really be, very overwhelming for one individual. So the key thing that you need to take home is that collaboration with like-minded individuals is also critical, because even here in Kenya, we've had people within, KEMRI, CAVI, they've been doing clinical trials for a very long time, especially within the malaria, HIV, infectious disease aspect. But as you know, things are moving, the world is moving away from that into the non-communicable aspects of clinical trial as well. So even for them, they're also interested in partnering with people who can have ideas, because clinical trials is essentially a generic process. If you've done a malaria study, you can easily do a HIV study, and you can easily do a muscular weakness study. So all these things, the skills that you attain are essentially interchangeable. And maybe apart from, oncology, which is kind of like a special field, but the rest are essentially the same. So it's not enough to have the patients, but it's also good to have all this mechanism behind you. And as I mentioned, there are people who are out there, clinical trial sites, who have been doing things like these ethics submissions, responding to regulatory questions. They do it every day. So the idea, as I mentioned, is just to basically find a working partner as far as that's concerned. Collaboration. So within Novartis, we have several projects in development. I'll not go through all of them, but we usually define this as early development, full development, and then the registration studies. So we have in the pipeline products for amblyopia, dry eye, eye pain, presbyopia, as well as the diabetic eye disease, retinopathy, and retinal vein occlusion, as well as other products. So on the later part of the slide, that's where you can, the post-registration aspects, that's where you can have investigator-initiated studies. And these are some of the things that, this is where you can also partner with us moving forward. Most of these other early development and full development are trials that come with a protocol already, who might or might not involve experts. We do involve experts in the drafting of these protocols, but oftentimes these are multi-center, and there's usually a little bit of more rigidity as far as that's concerned. So a good example to where to work with us will be on the later phases. So this is an interesting slide. I thought it would be interesting to bring it up, because we're always having at home that fight of, kids on the screen. And this goes to just show that research, or rather clinical trials, can be in any aspect of your life. So for here, there's a gaming problem. A gaming, what do you call it? It's a visual aid to be able to help patients, especially young children with amblyopia, correct their eyes. And it has shown very good work. And this comes from the observation that, every kid, every child you see out there will want to be on the screen. Yeah. So why not use that screen time to be able to help them correct something like amblyopia? So these are the things that we're also looking at as an organization to be able to correct. But just to bring it home a little bit, these are things that you observe every day, but can also be translated into research and for the benefit of the patients. So as I mentioned, we also have a category of investigator-initiated trials, IITs, that's what we call it. And these are basically if you have a scientific or medical observation or question that you have, And you can share this with, I mean, if especially if you need funding and it's a big program, we have that possibility of partnering with you. And this is basically, obviously, it has to be aligned with the Novartis strategic interests, and it has to be very scientific, I mean, scientifically robust and with medical merit. And just to note that from our end, this is usually an unsolicited request from a third party. So the third party could be an investigator group or an academic group or even a government agency who are able to basically own that process and help us along the lane. So how do you apply? We have a portal which is available to everyone, the GEMS portal. You can access it from any device. It's a publicly accessible portal where you will have to, put in your registration and also now look at how your application is going and the level of support that can be given. So here you'll have a lot of wiggle space in terms of some of the other publishing rights are concerned, more so as opposed to the protocol prescribed the ones that I've mentioned before. So for others, maybe you will not want to do a trial, but you might have a program, non-profit initiatives that you might be looking at. Here we have the ZOVA Awards. This is Excellence in Ophthalmology Vision Awards, where we usually give awards to people, to organizations, non-profit organizations who aim to improve or have initiatives to improve eye care within the world. So over this, over the time, we've been able to give out almost 56 projects funded across 29 African countries. And in Kenya, we have a program for diabetic retinopathy, which is doing very well. And at the bottom there, you can see a map of some of the countries that have been able to benefit from these programs. As you see, a lot of them are within the African, lower income countries. And this usually is very good. In Rwanda, we have something along these lines, especially as far as recognizing and also promoting surgeries within disadvantaged communities, as well as raising awareness on some of these retinal ailments. So for this, there's usually around about even 50,000 euros for a particular project, and it's something that can be really helpful, especially as far as promoting eye care in the countries. So that's all my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. And I must say that I'm very encouraged hearing some of the comments from you. It's research is a journey, but oftentimes they usually say journey begins with that one step. And but there's obviously a lot of people out there who've been able to run the steps, and it's also good to be able to partner with them in a productive manner to be able to achieve your goals, especially other investigators in other disease areas who can be very helpful to this. So thank you very much, and we look forward to any questions. And we thank you for your attendance today. That's all.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Evans, do we have a few more people on the poll so you can project the results and we can see if anything has changed?
We are at 24.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cindy, I think maybe people thought if they had participated earlier on, then they don't need to participate.
Oh, they didn't need to participate.
Yeah.
Okay,
this is supposed to be a repeat poll. So even if you participated the first time, you should be able to participate again so that we get the poll results.
Well, like I mentioned at the beginning, research does have that reiterative aspect to it. So something is not working, sometimes you go back to the drawing board and start off again. So thank you so much for your attention today, everybody. I hope you learned something new, or at least were encouraged in your research journey. We are available in case anybody has any more questions or would like to start up something. You can get in touch with us through the OSK office, and we can help you start your journey or continue your journey, depending on where you are at. Dr. Kalu, I think we'll hand it over back to you to close us off.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Cindy. Thank you, Dr. Sitati and Dr. Gishangi for that wonderful session. And thank you, Dr. Kevin. I didn't even know Novartis had an arm in dealing with research and able to actually support individuals or organizations for that. So thank you for that information. Before we close, Dr. Korir has an announcement to make. So even as Dr. Korir makes the announcement, the poll is still on your screens. Please submit your response. Oh, sorry, that's the poll result. Dr. Cindy, you've seen it. If there is any comment, you can make it after Dr. Korir. Dr. Korir, karibu very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kalu, and thank you for the wonderful job that you do with the CMEs. I know you normally are the one who is the last one to speak, and nobody gets to thank you much, but thank you very much. And the entire education committee. The research committee, the scientific committee has been doing very well as well with this public health education over the few weeks that we've had, and it's been very interesting. So I only have one announcement, and this is just to encourage everyone to register for COEXA. They're having their annual scientific conference on the 20th and 21st of August. So I am aware that they have a lot of presentations. This has been a conference we've been waiting since last year. So there are very many abstracts to sift through. So we're expecting very good presentations. So I'd encourage everybody to register and be part of it. So that was my only announcement. Thank you very much, Carly. Back to you.
Thank you, Daktari. On that note, also, I would like to remind us that we are going to take a short break from our CMEs, Thursday CMEs, for the month of August, and we'll resume in September to give time for people to prepare for the COEXA and attending the COEXA, so that we don't also get fatigued having a CME on Thursday for OSK and the COEXA is ongoing. So we'll, after today's CME, we will start back again on the 9th of September for the next session of our CME. So remember, we will keep you updated on the topic and the day when we get closer to it. Thank you very much for having been with us and participating in our CMEs throughout the year until currently. We wish you a good evening, and that you will enjoy the COEXA, and we'll meet again in September. So do have a good evening. Thank you. You may be free to, you're free to leave at your own pleasure.